Hi friends, I am once again coming to you from inside of a computer. Isn't that cool? Okay, we're going to pick up where we left off and talk about advertising part 2. And with this, we're specifically going to talk about one kind of odd form of advertising that is very prevalent nowadays and doesn't get talked about nearly as much in terms of its economic impact on the kind of media that we consume. Okay, but let's just as a quick reminder, catch everybody up. We are talking about advertising. And as we talk about advertising, we are talking about the different people involved in advertising. First, we've got the client, who are the folks who are trying to get more people to know about their products and services. We've got the agency, who are the folks who are going to try to book that space in different forms of media and are also going to help craft the message that companies want to people to receive about that product or service. And that can come in the form of the way we discuss their brand image as well as the tone of advertisements and the way they can take. We've talked about how the agency's job is to try to craft a message that supports the brand image of the product being sold. And we took a look at 4 different car advertisements. If you haven't watched those, please go watch those. We also took a look at a couple of advertisements for different alcoholic products, including one which is very sad and nice and touching and all that. Okay, so once the messages are crafted, once the client is happy with how the advertisement looks, if you are the agency, once you've completed the campaign, now what? Well, you need to buy some space. And what that means is you need to find somewhere to put that advertisement so that people can actually see it. And this is where the third of the 4 groups involved in advertising come into play, and that is the media. And what we're talking about here is mass media. Mass media have nearly always found themselves supported economically by some kind of advertising, especially in the United States. It's a little bit different in other countries. Television in other countries, particularly Europe, don't have quite as many advertisement. There's more publicly funded mass media in other countries. Advertising has always been a thing in the United States, except for 2 different forms of mass media that we've talked about thus far. And it's kind of interesting how they tend to not have advertising in them. One is books, and part of that is because books were invented before the idea of advertising was even really a thing. Also, where would you even put an advertisement in a book? One thing that the author of the textbook points out is because people are able to control how fast they read, there's no real guarantee of anyone actually looking at the ad if you were to put it inside of a book. However, we are starting to see some things around books, on the periphery of books, that do have advertisements. Like if you try to buy an Amazon Kindle, an e-reader, you can buy a cheaper version that has ads on the screen when it's sort of in idle mode or when it's shut off and you're not using it. It'll have ads that populate. And those versions can be anywhere between $30 and $60 cheaper than the version without advertising. So you're essentially buying a discounted version and you're supplementing that cost with the ability to see advertising. As a matter of fact, the author of your textbook very firmly believes that textbook companies are going to start soliciting advertisements in expensive textbooks to sell you discounted versions. So if you have a $200 or $300 nursing textbook, for example, nursing textbooks almost always are very expensive. The idea was that pharmaceutical companies might advertise their products inside of the textbooks in order to offset the costs. Personally, that makes me feel a little bit icky, but I don't know. No one asked me. The other of the 2 media forms we've talked about thus far that don't really have advertising in them per se are movies. It's not like in the middle of a movie the film stops and you get an advertisement. If the film is playing on television, sure, but that's because TV is the platform there. TV is the form of mass media, not the movie itself. Movies really only make money through product placement, and that's really the closest they come to advertising. As a matter of fact, let's just spend the next bit of this presentation talking about product placement because it is a really fascinating thing. Product placement is when a company pays to have one of their products be the ones that appear on screen or are used by characters on screen in a movie. Note that this also applies to television as well, but we're going to focus on it on the movie side of things today. Now, it's important to note, and this is something that the textbook makes a big deal about, and I want to make a big deal about it too. It's not subliminal advertising, because it's not subliminal. There is no such thing as subliminal advertising. Subliminal advertising is the myth or the idea that you can put secret coded messages into advertisements that will make you subliminally, sort of not consciously, desire that product. Psychology says this is simply not true. It simply doesn't exist. Also, subliminal advertising would have to be sneaky and hidden, and product placement is very not sneaky and very not hidden. As a matter of fact, while we're all social distancing and we're all quarantining and trying to stay away from the coronavirus, if you have a chance to check out the film Back to the Future 2, if you haven't watched that one lately, pop that on one night with the family or with the roommates or with the friends, and just have a watch of Back to the Future 2. There is no movie that, if you're trying to grasp the nature of product placement, that works better than Back to the Future 2. This movie is so chock full of product placement, it's almost silly, right? In the future, this is a spoiler, but it's a really old movie, but in the future, right, they don't just eat pizza, they eat Pizza Hut branded freeze-dried pizza that they put in a special oven and it turns into a full-size pizza. But it's not just any brand, it's Pizza Hut brand. And you don't just pop it into any fancy special future oven, you pop it into a Black & Decker brand future hydrator oven. And what do you drink with your Pizza Hut branded dehydrated pizza that's been made in a Black & Decker oven? You drink Future Pepsi, because you can't just have any other soda. You have to have specifically Pepsi. And then later on that day, when you read about something happening, you read about it not in a future newspaper without a brand you read about it in USA Today. And then, of course, the gas stations are all Texaco branded. Even the iconic things that we remember from this movie the most, like the hoverboard, was brought to you by Mattel. And then, of course, when you're going to ride your Mattel brand hoverboard, you want to make sure you're wearing Nikes while you do that. It is one of the most just super intensely product placed movies that you could ever see. Just for fun, during all of this, just watch this movie and have a notepad with you and make a tally mark every time you notice a product placement in the film. And film production companies, they may have a set rate that they go by, and they let companies come to them. So it could be, hey, we're a film production company and we are going to be making this new movie, and if you want your product in the film, then you come to us and we will charge you money for that. And it could be a set rate of something like $20,000 for every visual identity, and therefore it's just on the screen. Maybe that goes up to $30,000 if you have a name mention. So character A tells character B, hey, hand me that Pizza Hut pizza. And then $40,000 for interaction. So the actor actually then eats the Pizza Hut pizza. So it could be set rates, or you could take bidding, which we'll talk about here in a second. And usually you can charge more money with bigger movies with wider audiences. So if this goes back to our presentation when we were talking about the film ratings, right? We talked about how it's important to have a PG or a PG-13 film, because that means that you're going to have more people who are able to go and watch the film, and therefore you're going to be able to make more money off ticket sales. So you can charge more for product placement in a bigger movie with a wider audience, usually rated PG or PG-13. The film production company may also solicit companies if they need a specific product for a spot. So for example, if you're making a film and your main character is going to be using a camera during the film, you as the film production company may go to Nikon and Canon and say, hey, look, we need our main character to have a camera in the film. How much are both of you willing to pay for it to be your brand of camera that is used in the film? In this case, you'll be creating a bidding war between two different companies. And remember, major big production films are very expensive to produce. They cost a lot of money. And they also have to advertise themselves. So films have to have their trailers advertised on television, online, on YouTube, especially is where you see a lot of, nowadays, you see a lot of expensive advertisements for film trailers. And so the product placement amount can help offset that. Now, usually, product placement is only a very small amount of the overall operating budget of a given film. That is, unless you're Smurfs 2. Smurfs 2 to date is one of the only movies to have covered its entire production budget with product placement. They put so much product placement in Smurfs 2 that it actually offset their entire budget. It cost $105 million to make that movie, and they took in $150 million just in product placement deals. It was insane. Now, some of that is because the film was bankrolled by Sony, and Sony put some of their own stuff in the film and sort of counted that as a product placement. But this film, I have not watched it, but I have seen clips of it on YouTube where they'll show you like all the product placement. And it is another one of those films like Back to the Future 2 that is just chock full of product placement. And occasionally product placement can be used to help out a product's brand image. So the act of putting the product in the film ends up actually making your company look that much better or cooler. For example, Ray-Ban, the sunglasses company, they were selling less than 20,000 pairs of their 1950s classic style Wayfarer glasses by their early 1980s. By the time the 80s came around, Wayfarers just were not cool. They weren't fashionable. No one really liked them anymore. And so Ray-Ban got the bright idea of, hey, there's this hot new actor named Tom Cruise that everybody likes and is getting a lot of billing in top films. So why don't we pay to have him wear a pair of Wayfarers in the film Risky Business? And it completely changed the way that people saw Wayfarers. Sales of these sunglasses shot through the roof, and ever since then they have been a top-selling pair of sunglasses. And you can trace that change almost entirely back to their decision to pay money to put the glasses on the character in the film Risky Business. And not only did this work, it worked so well for the Ray-Ban sunglasses company that later in the 80s, they did it again with their aviator glasses in Top Gun using the exact same actor. And ever since then, Ray-Ban has consistently paid for product placement. They have tried their hardest to make Wayfarers something that are worn by cool characters that they want people to emulate. They want sort of rebellious characters in films, but good guys, but rebellious good guys to wear Wayfarers. Also, it can help launch entire products. Like there's a lot of writing out there about it, so I won't go into it a lot, but when they were making the film E.T., a lot of people didn't really think the film was going to be all that special. A lot of people tended to think it was going to be a flop. And so when they needed a candy to be in the film, the producers of the film went out and originally tried to get Mars to agree for M&Ms. But Mars was like, I don't know, this doesn't seem like this is going to be a good movie. So Reese's was at the time just launching their Reese's Pieces candy, a little peanut butter, like M&Ms, but peanut butter. You all know, you eat them too. And so because Reese's was just launching this product and sort of didn't have any reputation for it, they said, sure, what is there to lose? We'll put the product in the film. At the time, Reese's became synonymous with E.T. The film went on to be a huge, massive blockbuster hit, and it helped launch Reese's Pieces as a product. A lot of companies and advertisers have avoided putting their products placed into shows that depict violence or touchy subjects like drugs. Historically, any film that involved drug usage or criminal activity, there tended to be way less product placement. And then Breaking Bad happened. Breaking Bad, of course, is the show that involves a high school chemistry teacher who is diagnosed with cancer, and to pay for cancer treatment and to have money left over for his family after he dies, decides to make meth. And not the kind of show that typically you would see a lot of product placement in, because it involves the production of crystallized methamphetamine. However, the show got great ratings, just like massive, massive, massive television ratings. And so you started seeing a lot of product placement. You started seeing a suspicious amount of Coca-Cola pop up in the background. Dodge, very famously, Dodge and Chrysler took out huge amounts of money to put their cars in the films. or in the television show as well. However, product placement can backfire if you're not careful about it. One of the very famous stories about this is Heineken supposedly paid more than $50 million to try and replace an iconic item, and it made people angry. And that was Heineken supposedly wanted in the film Skyfall for James Bond, instead of drinking a vodka martini shaken not stirred, wanted James Bond to order a Heineken beer instead. That backfired because people really didn't like the idea of the character's iconic thing, the character's iconic drink changing like that just based on money. So instead, they changed it so that Heineken would just have James Bond, or sometimes just Daniel Craig wearing a suit and a wink and a nudge notion towards James Bond, have him be in the TV commercials, but not necessarily put the products in the film itself. Even though Heineken and the James Bond brand have had a contract going all the way back to 1997, the notion of trying to change James Bond's drink in the film really upset people. And then last but not least, in the equation of what it means in advertising is the customers, and that's you. But I'm not going to go on too much about the customer part of it because that's what the textbook chapter covers quite a bit. So with that, those are my video lectures for the week, talking about the different players in the advertising game and emphasizing some little elements that are good to know about advertising. So with that, stay safe out there, and make sure you take the hot take, do the hot take assignment this week. I think you'll have a lot of fun with it. All right, see you next time.